Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk About, the podcast where we dive into the stuff most people avoid, awkward conversations, messy truths, and all the bits of life that don't fit into neat little boxes. If you've never had to fight for care or prove you're disabled enough to get support, you're probably lucky enough not to know how broken the system is. In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on two of the UK's most chaotic disability systems: adult social care and access to work. Services that should support dignity and independence, but too often bury people in red tape, postcode lotteries, and months-long waits. My guest today is Louis, founder of Unstoppable Living, a no-fluff, lived experience-led advocate who knows exactly what happens when policy meets real life. Whether you're disabled, a carer, or just wondering what access to work actually means, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Thank you for doing this today.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Cool. I'm excited to talk to you about this because a lot of my friends are going through all sorts of things, so I'm hoping for lots of insights from you.
Okay, so no pressure then, right?
No pressure. Do you want to start by introducing who you are and what drives you to do all this advocacy work that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Louis. I am a disability inclusion and accessibility specialist. And a lot of the work that I do is based on my lived experience. So I have a degenerative neuromuscular condition called spinal muscular atrophy. And I guess from a very young age, I've always had the desire and this burning passion within me to want to advocate for my disabled community, because growing up in South Africa, it was not the most ideal environment for someone with a disability. And even now in 2025, there is still so much lacking in terms of the disability agenda, as well as infrastructure being available. You know, in South Africa, we don't have things like accessible transport unless you're doing it through a private company, which is exorbitantly expensive. So a majority of the disabled community struggle and have to adapt or make do with the resources they have available. And that's kind of just made me realize that there's not enough of us who are standing up and saying, this is not okay. We can be doing so much better. So this is, I guess, this is where the advocacy work comes from and where it stems from.
Okay. And how does that compare to the UK system?
I mean, look, coming to the UK, I've been here now for 5 years. It's completely changed my life. Having accessible infrastructure available to me, the NHS, oh my God, the NHS is amazing. Um, I come from a medical environment where I had to have private medical insurance in order to see proper doctors, and that was approximately £386 a month that I had to pay in order to get that kind of support in South Africa. So yes, coming to the UK, it's completely different. It's a lot more progressive than what I was used to. Um, Having said that, though, like all countries, there's still more that can be done. There are still things that need to change. I think the narrative around disability needs to change, just like it has to in other countries. And I also think that some of the systems in place don't support us the way that we need to be supported.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's definitely been my experience and the experience of some people I know. So today we're going to be talking about access to care and obviously the access to work sort of schemes that we have in this country as well. I've read a quote
Mhm.
from you that it says your approach is compassionately, brutally honest. So how does that shape you when you show up in spaces for advocacy? How are you met?
Yeah, I think I've realized that a lot of decision makers these days don't have time for fluff. So when I use my compassionate brutality to help them humanize the problem and understand that it is real lives that are affected by the decisions they make, this is, for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm grateful, but it's getting me more and more airtime and more opportunity to be able to push an agenda that not many people have the courage to challenge. I think when we think about societal norms, and I'm sure you would be aware of this as well, is that disabled people are kind of usually fall into three categories of being benefit sheets, scroungers, or villains in movies, right? Or superheroes. Like, and then there is nothing else in between when we think about how society generally perceives us. So for me, it was really important to jolt people and help them have an emotive response to what I'm saying. Because I think that no one really has time for the fluff anymore. And when someone does start with the fluff, they tend to switch off. So it goes in one ear and out the other. So, I've gone as far as equating the average wheelchair user bathroom experience to an able-bodied person using a 2-inch hole in the wall for both bathroom things. Those are the kind of things that I'm saying on stage because people need to understand the ramifications of how we are treating people like myself and how we're expecting people like myself to adapt to an environment that never even considered us properly in the first place.
Yeah, totally relate to that. Okay, so like what has been your personal experience then of navigating the care system, like the social care system in the
Yeah.
UK?
Yeah, so this has been a very big learning curve for me. I've had to do a lot of research, a lot of communication with my fellow disabled peers to try and understand the landscape. I wasn't from here. I didn't really understand how the system worked. So in the beginning, the system played me. When I arrived here, and um, let me just I feel like I have to clarify this because this seems to be a contentious topic when we talk about I arrived here and wanted to receive support. I am a British citizen thanks to heritage. So I'm here on a British passport and I'm not here trying to steal people's benefits or anything because those are some of the labels I've been given previously. But um, the system played me because I didn't know what I was entitled to or what I should be asking for. So when we first engaged with adult social care, it was, I think, it was around 10 or 11 months after being in the UK. And they basically said, okay, well, we can give you 4 hours a day of care. And what that meant was that my partner was doing everything else. So they were coming in the morning for 2 hours to get me ready. So doing the whole shower and all that jazz, breakfast, medication, and then getting me set up in front of my workstation. Then they would leave, come back at lunchtime to have lunch and go to the bathroom. So if my partner was at work, from the time that the carers left to the time that they came back, I had no support to go to the bathroom. I would have to hold it in. And they would then come back again around 4:30 to help me have a cup of tea and my evening medication, so that when my partner came home from work, um, basically she just had to cook dinner and we'd get on with our evening routine. Um, that obviously changed once I got a proper social worker in place. This was obviously pandemic times when I arrived, so um, the first social worker I had was only a telephone conversation because they weren't doing face-to-face visits. My case then got handed to someone else post-COVID, so post-second lockdown, um, who actually came into my home and saw the complexity of my condition and said, okay, yeah, you need more support. And slowly but surely, I've been learning more and more about the system, and I've had to go back to them and push back and say this is not enough. And it was okay for the last 3 years, if I'm honest. My current package supports me 12 hours a day, and my partner then takes care of the evening sessions. Um, the the problem that I have is my partner is not a carer. She's
Yeah.
my partner and she shouldn't be forced to do care work. And it has definitely taken a toll on our relationship. The the problem is that the system doesn't necessarily recognize what they are trying to push us to do. So, what I mean by this is the last 3 years, I wasn't really traveling a lot for work. A lot of what I was doing was based from home, so that was easy. I didn't have to worry about the hours. I didn't have to worry about care, because that was most of it was in my home. But the more and more my job role changed and I started going out to see clients more and more often, the care company started effectively breaking the law, in my opinion, so going against the human rights and the equality acts that are in place to support us,
Mm.
because they were insisting on certain things being done, like a risk assessment for every new office I'm going to. I mean, imagine you're talking to a client about a potential £50,000 project, but you're not allowed to go and meet them face to face until your care company has called their health and safety manager to do a risk assessment.
And I'm assuming that takes a long time.
Absolutely, and not just that. Like, this is a business that I'm hoping to spend money with us, and they then need to first justify that it's safe enough to for me to be there. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just it doesn't make sense, right? So I took on the crazy task of employing my own carers. And what that means is I've switched to direct payments. So the council pays me the funding, and then I then manage the hours, the payroll, the timesheets, the notes, all of that stuff that the care company used to do. It now falls on me and my carers to do, which is a wonderful trade-off. I would rather do all that work and be in control of my care and how things are done, instead of a care agency telling me that according to their policies, they can't do this and they can't do that, and we need to do risk assessments for this and risk assessments for that. It's a very, very inhibiting environment, and I, I know that they're breaking the law, but no one's really challenging that. Even when you contact the CQC, so the Care Quality Commission, they tell you that they don't insist on agencies having those policies in place. That's their own policies that they've developed as their organization has grown. So they are literally getting away with prohibiting people from participating in society. So that's barrier number one. So let's park that aside. The other challenge is, now that I'm self-employed, with my own consultancy business, I am I am out and about far more than I ever was. And this means that my current package is not really supporting the amount of support that I require, because I'm away from home a lot. I
Right.
mean, on Sunday I leave to go do a job that's going to keep me away from home for 9 days. And that's 216 hours worth of support that I require, but I only get 86 hours a week,
Right. How does that even work
right?
then?
Well, so the reality is, when you're controlling your own care package the way I am, is you can accumulate hours. So if you, for example, I have 12 hours a day, 7 days a week in my package. And what that means is that on a Saturday, I and a Sunday, I can save approximately 16 hours a week that I can then accumulate to cover me when I go on trips. But that means that half of Saturday and all of Sunday falls on my partner to do
Yeah, I
everything,
was going to say
and
that it's
all the
not. Yeah,
routines, all the
it's not
work.
free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, it's not. It's not ideal, and as I said, it has taken a toll on our relationship. Even though we've been together for 13 years, um, and and that was working previously, because of not needing to travel so much. But right now, I'm I'm constantly in a deficit every week, and therefore the accumulated hours I've built up over the last 2 years means that I'm very quickly starting to run out of a budget. So as it stands, I if it continues in the trajectory that it's continuing, I'm going to have no funding to pay for care by the end of August.
Wow. Does it
So,
renew every year or
well, you get they pay money into your account every month. But the reality is that I'm using more than what I'm getting funding for.
okay. Right. Yeah.
This is the dilemma, right? So if you think about it, the 9 day trip works out to 18 days worth of my standard care. But I'm
Yeah.
using 18 days of care in 9 days because I'm going to need 24-hour support.
Because you're working.
Yes, because I'm working,
It's
right?
crazy.
So I thought, well, let me start being proactive and let me engage with the adult social care system, try to get onto continual healthcare because as far as I'm concerned, looking at the criteria, I should be eligible for continual healthcare. I have been declined for full funding 3 times already, right? This is something that many people are getting access to, but it's purely dependent on your caseworker. If they know about your condition, then it's smooth sailing. But when you're dealing with someone who knows nothing about your condition, it's like if you pardon my French, it's like pissing in the wind, right?
Hmm.
Like you just get dequalified on technicalities. And
Yeah.
and when I originally did my first continual healthcare assessment, at the time I was on a CPAP machine for um, sleep apnea, and they told me that that was the only reason why I got declined for full funding, because I was if I was on a BiPAP, I would be eligible for 24-hour support and
Right.
24-hour funding, right?
Yeah.
Now, since that initial assessment, we got them to agree to contribute, I think it's 17 hours a week of my package that they're contributing to. So they acknowledge that there is a medical need within my care. So therefore they should be funding towards that. But since that initial setup, I have now been switched to a BiPAP because the CPAP wasn't working the way that they wanted it to. And
Right.
now I've been declined again when I went for a review. They declined me again, even though that was the only thing missing from the initial consultation. So it's kind of being shoved from pillar to post, pillar to post, pillar to post. And if I'm honest, you have to be really resilient in order to combat this because they just do it on a technicality and they
Mhm.
get away with it.
Yeah. No, they do. I'm actually like a full-time carer for my son, and I literally have never sought any of this stuff, any respite, anything, because I know how hard it is and I know the justification you need to give them. And I just thought, "Do you know what? I'm just going to do it myself because it's too tiring and too like I'm exhausted enough. He's up a lot of the night. I don't get much sleep. I'm
Hmm.
like, I can't do it. Just fighting for the taxi to get him to school and back was ridiculous. And I thought, if that's as bad as that is, don't even think I can tackle. I mean, I'm fortunate, I guess, that I can do it, but if you can't and you have to rely on these systems, then it's heartbreaking for people to be having this fight. I think, like obviously I've been researching into it, and I looked at like postcode lotteries and the differences in different areas. But I think that also falls to people's knowledge of, as you say, different kind of conditions and how they affect people.
Hmm.
I mean, do you think like a centralization of services would help, or training for people that are doing the assessment? I mean, what would help?
I mean, we're not talking about opening Pandora's box here, okay?
Yeah.
So bear with me. So does the system need reform? Absolutely. Like there are so many things that need to be changed in the system. Right. The problem is that the decision makers at the moment think that by cutting funding that they're going to be able to fix the problems, and this is not the case, right? This whole new reform journey that Labour has been on, it's not going to work. Um, the 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 problem that we have is that there are individuals who are constantly told we need to get you back into work. We need to get you back into work. But the system doesn't support that, right?
Mhm.
You know, I after we got declined for my continual healthcare review, my social worker said, why don't we try going down the access to work route? Because a lot of your travel is for access to work. So maybe they will fund towards it because it's part of their remit. They won't fund all of the hours, but at least they will contribute towards the package, which might give the council then a little bit more wiggle room to give you more hours, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm open-minded. Let's go for this. You go through the online application, and then you get bombarded with a notification at the end of the process that says there's up to a 30-week wait for someone to pick up your case. Right?
Wow.
30 weeks. Like, what? My funding will run out before that. Well before that. Right? So
Yeah.
there's dilemma number one. The other dilemma now is, well, we want to save funding by getting more people back to work. Well, if access to work is the pathway to getting adjustments, and businesses don't have the right mechanisms in place to support people until they get the funding back from the WP, they are not going to be able to thrive in their role. They are not going to be able to even get through their probation period because
Yeah.
they're not going to have access to the tools and support that they need from day one. Now, there is a caveat to the notification. It says that if you're starting a new role, your case will be prioritized and you should hear from us within 4 weeks.
Mhm.
So my question is, if someone's already in post, and when we look at the disabled statistics, we know that over 75% of the disabled population are disabilities that were acquired later in life, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, if you're already in post, something happens and you're now disabled and require support, you are going to have to wait 30 weeks because you're already in post.
Hmm.
How does that make sense?
I mean, in that 30-week period, do they still keep paying like the things they were paying before, or do you stop getting paid until that process has happened? How does that work?
So access to work is this is dependent on whether you're in the system already or not, right? So if you're already receiving support from access to work, depending on what that support is, it's funded. But your new request for additional support is up to a 30-week wait.
Hmm.
If you're a new applicant, there's no support until they pick up your case. So that means it falls on the business. And then it's dependent on whether the business has got the right mechanisms in place to be able to support that need and requirement that you have to be able to function in the workplace. And the reality is that in most cases it means people lose their job or
Right.
their employment letter or offer of employment gets rescinded because they are not able to hit the ground running when they come into the workplace. This is the reality of the disabled workforce.
Yeah, if you're disabled now then and the government like obviously wants to get everybody back into work, how is that even, I mean, obviously it's not going to work as you've already said, but how would that work in reality if you've never had a job or you haven't recently had a job because of your disability and then you want to get a job and they want to get you off the benefits? But how does that work with a 30-week wait? I don't understand.
I mean, the reality is that it's not going to work. This is why I said that I don't actually know how we fix this. I think your comments around training is very valid. I think that there needs to be more awareness around how to deal with cases. I think the biggest problem that we have is we don't have disabled people supporting disabled people in these
Right.
decision processes. So we're relying on healthcare professionals who are medically trained but not necessarily specialists or have specialist knowledge of all conditions. I mean, disability is so diverse and so intersectional that it would be impossible for us to give all staff training so that they understand all dynamics of a condition. However, I think that there is a major lack of empathy in the process. I think that there is a major lack of authentically understanding the way someone articulates their barriers. Um, because I've also noticed how well you present to the caseworker will also determine how well the process is for you, goes for you. So if you're able to justify every pushback that they give you, then they have no option but to support you with funding. But the problem is if you don't know that, if you're unable to articulate it in that way, and they feel that you haven't given them a valid enough reason, the answer is no,
Hmm.
right? So so I think this is a bit of a double-edged sword scenario because in one hand you have a system that is supposed to be supporting you in order to get into work and it doesn't. And on the other hand, we have businesses, not all businesses, but a majority of businesses don't have the right policies and procedures and processes in place to support disabled people. And this is why I do the work that I do, right? I'm 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 the one that can come in and help businesses fill those gaps and help them understand what their responsibilities are and how they can go about supporting their staff effectively. But they have to want to engage with my services in order to do that, right? They have
Yeah.
to want to invest in that knowledge and expertise. So the reality is that most of them do it on their own and quite often get it wrong
Mhm.
and are usually doing things on a case by case basis. And they're using the legal terminology of reasonable adjustments. And this then creates a gray area because as a manager, does it fall on me to decide what's reasonable or not? And the truth is, no, that's not how the system works. Adjustments are supposed to be something that supports any individual who requires extra support in order to thrive in the workplace. It's not about you deciding whether that's a reasonable expense or not. And because there's such a long wait from the WP, it means that the business then in inverted commas has to take a risk on spending that money on what you need in the hope that they're going to get it back once DWP picks up your case. And we know that most businesses are risk averse, especially in current economic times. So so there is a vicious cycle that we end up being in because if we don't have a supportive employer or a progressive employer who wants to do the right thing and invest in the right things, then we don't have that support from the business, which means we're back at square one in the system that takes forever to pick up your case and actually doesn't support you effectively. Now, that sounds a very negative overview of the DWP and the access to work scheme. I want to say here that this is a very, very good scheme and it does support people, but only if they're able to articulate things in a way for the caseworker to understand. Only if they can justify on the pushbacks. So this creates a very big gap for many individuals who can't do that well enough. And they tell you that you can have someone with you during your assessment, but trying to coordinate an advocate diary alongside the data they give you is not always easy. So in most cases, we are left to our own devices and have to represent ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, is there anybody there, like if you ask for assistance or help, is there anybody, do they provide anybody?
So no, you have to go and get that support. There are a couple of organizations like Citizens Advice and what's the other one? Oh gosh, testing my memory tonight. I can't think of the other one right now, but it's I know Citizens Advice does help with this. If your condition is or if your disability is has got a charity, then the charity often provides knowledge and additional support so that you're better prepared for your case. And then also what I've done recently is I've said to my social worker, would you be able to make yourself available to help me justify the support that I require? Because you know my case better than most of my healthcare professionals anyway. And I
Yeah.
would rather have someone who knows me and knows my situation versus a citizen's advice representative who is going to have an online consultation with me to try and understand my case and see how they can support me during the process.
Yeah. I mean, why is this a fight? You said you don't know how to fix it, but to me, this seems like a fairly obvious kind of solution in that the charities that support people with these conditions obviously deal with this day in, day out. They understand it, they know it. Why can they not be making assessments and like actually helping people instead of us fighting a system that seems to be set against trying to get anything that we need?
So this comes down to health and safety, and because disability is a medical thing that affects us, therefore the system dictates that it's only a healthcare professional that can be involved in this process. So you can have advocates that come with you, but they can't make decisions because they are not healthcare professionals.
But as we've already pointed out, the healthcare professionals 9 times out of 10 don't actually have in-depth knowledge of your condition anyway, whereas obviously the charities and people dealing with it do.
Well, and therein lies the problem that we're up against. This is why it's always a fight. You know, I'm really painting a negative picture, and I don't like this because I think that there are some really great experiences out there. Even myself, my access to work applications thus far have been quite fairly simple, and I've been able to get the devices that I wanted and the software that I needed. But having said that, I have spoken to a multitude of people from all demographics of disability that say that they had really shit experiences. And when you ask them why they think that is, well, the caseworker didn't understand what support I require. They didn't understand how my disability affected me. So again, this comes back to what I said earlier around this vicious cycle where you have to do all the research yourself. You have to understand the type of language that healthcare professionals use so that when you're speaking to them one to one, you can then use that as your ammunition and say, well, I want you to know that I can speak your lingo. I want you to know that I've done my research. I want you to know that for every pushback, I have an answer. Because then they have no choice but to give you the support that you need because you're able to justify it in every corner. Now,
I can't,
now
I
the
can't think of
reality,
anything else that happens in. I can't think of it like anywhere else in your life where you, do you know what I mean? If you were going in for an operation, you wouldn't tell the surgeon that you completely researched the operation and you knew what he should be doing and tell
yeah,
him how to do it, would you? It makes no sense to me.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense. I think this is the problem: is it doesn't make sense, and the reality of this situation is that the burden falls on us as the individual with a disability to kind of do all that heavy lifting of research and learning the lingo and going to charities to ask for support and advice. And you know, I've I worked within the charity that supports my condition, spinal muscular atrophy in UK. So there's a lot of knowledge that I gathered whilst working there as well. And there are some of my peers who have got amazing care packages put in place. So it's like, well, dude, tell me how you did this. Like, what was the process? How did you justify it? So that when it comes time to for me to start pushing back, I can say, well, these are the reasons, and I know that there are other people who have said the same thing, and they've got that support that they require. So why am I the only one that's now segregated from that, right? Um, eh, I I think one of the other major problems that we're up against is the government are running out of money. And that's not our fault, but it's the reality that we're in. And they have to make it difficult to mitigate them hemorrhaging finances, which which is completely wrong and inappropriate. But this is the reality of the world. No matter where you go in the world, there are decisions that government makes to try and prevent them from hemorrhaging money, and therefore people, us as citizens, take the consequences of that. We take the brunt of that, and even more so from the disabled community because the world is still not used to us being front and center. The world is still not used to us as individuals who want to be in the workplace, want to be contributing positively to society. So there's still that whole societal piece that has to change, because the societal view of disability is further compounding the decisions at government level, decision maker level, and therefore it's making our job harder. And this is why it's always a fight.
Yeah, totally. I agree. If somebody is stuck in these systems and feels helpless, and I mean, you're basically saying, find out everything you can about it, research it. If they're not capable of doing that, what do they do?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And I'm going to say start by answer by saying is I don't really know because I've not been in that situation. But if I was having a conversation with someone one to one, I would be saying, well, what are the major things that we need to make sure you have in place? Okay, there's a list. Now we have a list. What needs to happen in each of these areas? Okay, now we have a detailed list. Okay. Is there a charity that supports your condition? Maybe. Okay. Let's go to them. Let's ask them for advice. Should you be articulating, based on this detailed list, the level of support that you require? Do they have somebody on their team who would be able to accompany you to your assessment so that they can help do that on your behalf, right? Um, Now, this is a, a really interesting thing. I am not a support trained individual, but there are one or two people within my network who have said, Louis, we've heard about you and the positive experience you had with access to work. Please, can we have a conversation around what you said, how you did it, what am I missing in my case, so that when it does come time to my appointment, I'm fully prepared for it, right? And I've done that for a couple of people within my network. One of them has a condition that is very all over the place, and their fatigue levels can change at any time. Sometimes they can get very foggy and hazy in their thinking patterns. So it was about me just creating the space for them to do it at their own pace and be able to hear them out and say, well, that was a very basic explanation. You could have gone further by saying X, Y, and Z, because the reality of this process is little detail means little support. Pro Over providing detail means that there's even more data and information for that individual who's assessing you to make a more educated decision on whether they're going to support you properly or not.
Hmm.
Um, and so my advice would be is to definitely have a conversation with the charity that supports your condition. Um, if they do have staff available to go with you to an assessment or attend an online assessment, then definitely grab them for that opportunity because they're not going to be charging you for that service. If there isn't a charity that supports your condition, I would say Citizens Advice is a really good place because in most cases it's people who have been around the block before. They know the legalities, they know the responsibilities of councils and DWP, so they would be able to advise you, if not help you during the entire process.
Hmm. You've got so much lived experience of this and so much knowledge, obviously, and you do such amazing work for it. I've got a question that is interesting to me, and I'm interested in exploring it. I went to obviously, I use a lot of charities, and they assist me with loads of things and help me with loads of things. I'm lucky. Um, and there's one called Mobilize, and they have started encouraging disabled people and carers to use AI to either rage write
Mhm.
letters, and then AI actually puts it in a manner that people will listen to it, because the second you start shouting in meetings and stuff, people stop listening to you. So it puts it in a way that gets your point across, but in a really good way. I'm just wondering if that could be helpful for
Mhm.
the things you've just been talking about. I mean, there are waiting lists for like citizens advice. They are incredible. I've used them. I use them all the time, but they
Yeah,
are overstretched, as are every charity. Do you think there's a way forward for AI with this? Do you think it could help people start to put those lists together?
I am so happy you've brought this up. I love AI. AI has become part of my life. It's been a mainstay in my life. Like all that I do is AI supported. So yes, th that is a very valid point. AI can definitely help you articulate things in the right way. But I think that I want to wave a yellow flag here. AI is only as good as what you're prompting it to be, right?
Absolutely.
So this is also going to be another task for the individual because they're going to have to learn how to prompt properly. They're going to have to learn that they need to double reference the work. So if ChatGPT spits something out and or advises them on something, they're going to go have to check that to make sure it's accurate because AI is not perfect and it's still very far from being perfect.
Mhm.
But where I think your point is very valid is taking your own words and helping you articulate that in a very concise, precise, and healthcare professional orientated language. Absolutely. It'll do that with its eyes closed. I think that that is a really, really good shout. Um, I I have really put in a lot of hours into understanding AI and understanding prompt engineering, and this is why AI supports me so effectively because I've learned how to use it in the best way possible for myself. I've even gone as far as designing my own GPT so that I know that whatever it's doing is what I have told it to do. It's got all my resources, all of my knowledge, everything is in one place. And when it spits out something weird, it's like, no, that's not how I write. This is what I've edited to. Please learn from this, so that next time it's just better and better and better. So, um, it's going to take work, but I think that it would definitely pay off if they went down the AI route to support them in that way. I think that there is there is a risk as well with AI because of its own biases. We know that AI is rife with bias, so it's always important to just double check before sending anything out.
Yeah,
That's the best
totally
advice
agree.
I can
But
give.
yeah, like you, I've been learning it as well. And I mean, I had like a lot of support at university. I've recently just finished my degree, and I feel like that support would need to be in a job, and haven't found a job yet that would provide that level of support. So AI is now doing what my learning assistant did for me. So, it spell checks everything, it's doing grammar checking, it's literally constructing sentences, and it's getting me started on tasks because, those are the things I struggle with as somebody with autism and stuff. So I think, yeah, it does
Mhm.
have incredible potential, but I do agree, again, there's a barrier there, isn't there? I was going to ask you if people want to follow you and follow what you do and support you in any way, how do they do that?
Wow, that's a really nice question. Thank you. I would say my main platform is LinkedIn. So just looking up my name on LinkedIn, it's quite a unique name, so it's not going to be difficult to find me. Um, I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, but they are very sporadic in terms of content. I really focus a lot on LinkedIn, um, and I'm trying to be better at some of the other platforms, but that's taking time. Um, so definitely on LinkedIn, I don't have a website just yet, because I have my own standards of what that should look like. So I want to make sure it's right before I launch it. But LinkedIn is usually my go-to page. It has everything about me. It has everything about the work that I do. But more importantly, um, just drop me a message, a direct message on any of those platforms. I'd be happy to speak to anyone and offer advice and guidance if they need it. I don't charge for that. This is just me trying to give back to my community and help put them in a better position. And I don't always have the answer, but I might have a way for you to go and find the answer. And that's just yeah, that's just the reality of things. I try to do everything, but I can't.
Everybody can. Okay, so that's been an amazing conversation. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
Wow. So I find myself saying the same thing at the end of most podcasts I'm on, especially when they are disability related, is I just really want our community to understand that advocacy and self-advocacy are really important for our community. And you don't have to be on the front lines like some of us who are even brave enough to go and stand in front of Westminster with our billboards and picket signs and all of that jazz, protesting for our rights. You don't have to do those things to be an advocate. Just commenting, sharing your peers' content is another form of advocacy. So if you don't have the courage to be on the front line, because we're all different and we all have different ways of contributing, and advocacy is the same. You can still be an advocate without shouting from the pulpit, without raging in public or raging within your community. Just liking, commenting, sharing other people's comments, signing the petitions that are out there, just really helping to drive that agenda, because individual trailblazers and advocates can make some noise, but together we're a voice that no one can stop hearing.
Perfect way to finish. Thank you so much. What a quote that is. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No problem. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. That's it for this week's episode. A huge thank you to Louis for bringing the clarity, fire and fierce honesty we all need more of when it comes to social care and access to work in the UK. If there's one thing I hope you take from this conversation, it's that none of this is about asking for special treatment. It's about demanding systems that recognise humanity, dignity and the right to live and work without being buried in red tape or left behind by postcode lotteries. If you're someone still waiting for support, still battling the system, you're not alone. And if you're someone in a position to change these systems, then now's the time to stop hiding behind intent and start delivering real, measurable impact. You can find more from Louis and the Unstoppable Living in show notes. Give him a follow, share this episode, and help amplify the voices fighting for equality every day. As always, if this episode's resonated with you, please tag us, repost, and help keep the conversation moving. Until next Monday, keep questioning, keep advocating, and keep showing up. Take care. This podcast was brought to you by Nicola Foley and Buzzsprout, music from Zapsplat.